Hello, thank you for joining me today for our online programming. My name is Marianne Wright and I'm a 4-H area educator for Lincoln University Cooperative Extension. Let's start with a 4-H pledge. I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living for my club, my community, my country, and my world. Thank you very much. Today's activity is another STEM activity, and it comes from the 4-H STEM Lab, which is an online resource you can find at 4h.org. Today's activity is called How You Can Use Wind Energy to Lift a Load. So I just printed off these resources. You can go ahead and do the same, or you can just follow along today with this activity. The supplies you need today are a piece of cardstock or construction paper. You need 2 different sizes of straws. So you want the size to be the size around. So you want one to be slightly bigger because the point is we're going to slip one straw through the other. So if you don't have 2 different sizes, you could use 1 straw, and you could use something that would fit inside like a skewer or a small dowel or something like that. So you'll need those 2. You'll need a small cup. So I had some little bathroom cups, so something small like this. You'll also need a larger cup, or if you have some sort of canister. The main thing is we want them to be quite a bit different in heights for our activity. We'll also need some string or some yarn, a hole punch, some scissors, some tape, and a pencil. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to make a windmill, and we're hoping that it will be able to convert some of that wind energy into some power and be able to lift a load. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your piece of paper, and we're going to cut out our actual blades, the actual part of the windmill. Now, if you print the online resources, there is a nice little template for you online, and it looks like this. So you can see it's a square. It's a 6.5 by 6.5 square, and it shows you where to cut around the edge and also how to cut your lines up almost to the center. So you see we have a little bit, about 1.5 inches from there to the center, and the center is marked. But if you don't have a printer at home, that's okay. We can do this pretty much just by cutting our own piece of paper. So what we're going to do to start is I want it to be about 6.5 inches by 6.5, and a regular piece of paper is 8.5 by 11. So I know I need to cut off about 2 inches from my piece of paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of eyeball it. If you have a ruler available, you can go ahead and use that. But what I did, I just folded what I thought was about 2 inches off my paper. And now I have that fold line there, and it can be my guide as I cut off this extra piece of paper. So now I have one side of my paper that is approximately 6.5, but I need the other side. So I'm going to take one corner of my paper, and I'm going to go up to the opposite side. And I'm going to make sure that my sides are aligning. And then I'm not going to fold it, but I'm going to go over to this opposite corner, and I'm just going to kind of push it down slightly. That way it can kind of be my guidelines. This is where your pencil will come in handy. I want you to mark that on both sides. So then when you unfold it, you see I have 2 notches here in my paper. And now I'm going to use that to cut my other side of the paper. So you're just going to go from one to the other. So that's my excess. I don't need that. But now I have my paper. So if you don't have a ruler, another thing you can use is your extra paper that you cut off. So I'm going to use this like a ruler now. I'm going to go from one corner to the opposite corner, And I'm going to lightly draw a line on my paper. Then I'm going to go from the other corner. So I'm drawing a cross on my paper, basically, connecting both corners to the opposite corners. So what you're going to get is just a really light X on your paper. This is going to be your guide. Now, to do my cuts, I first need to cut a hole in the very center where those intersect, and then I need to cut the line down. But remember, I said not all the way. So I'm going to make a little notch in my paper to designate how far I want to cut my line, so I don't go past that. So I want them to be about equal there. They don't have to be exact, but you want to do as best you can there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut the hole in my paper. Now to do this, it's really handy if you have a hole punch. It makes things a lot easier. Now remember, I don't want to fold my paper, but I do want to cut the middle. And my hole cut punch cannot go all the way into the center. It doesn't do that. So what I need to do is I need to sort of curve my paper until I get the center. So see, it's not folded, but I do have it folded at the very center. And what I want to do is take my hole punch and I'm going to line it up so I'm cutting a half of a hole in the both sides of my paper. You see how that looks? So that way, when I unfold it, I have one center hole there. So now I need to take my scissors and I'm going to go on those lines that I drew all the way to the little notch that I noted with my pencil on all four corners here. There we go. So now I have a piece of paper that looks like this. There's a hole in the middle, and then I have a hole cut in each of the corners of my square. So now what we're going to do is we are going to punch a hole in 4 of these corners. So now instead of having 4 corners, we have 8 little corners. So I want to make sure to skip every other corner. So if I start here, I'm going to skip this one and then punch a hole here. Skip, then punch a hole, skip, punch a hole. So I have already done that in this one right here, and this is going to be the one that I use for my windmill. So see how opposite holes I have a punch. Now I'm going to take my thinner straw, or if you're using a pencil or something like that, that would also work. So we're going to make sure that it actually fits through a hole. If it doesn't, you'll need to make your hole a little bit bigger. But we're going to put that straw right through the middle of our pinwheel. And then we're going to take the first corner with the hole and bend it slightly. We're not going to crease it. We're just going to have it so it kind of rests on there. We're going to take the next one. Again, we're going to thread it through our straw. Take the next one. And take that final one. So again, we're being sure not to crease our folds because we want there to be a curve, not a bend. So now we need to secure our windmill. We don't want to push it all the way in. We want to leave about 1 inch in our windmill. So I'm just going to use some tape to secure my windmill. So I'm going to take the front and I'm just going to sort of tape so it just catches it right like that. And then on the back I'm going to put some tape to keep it about 1 inch from that front. Now if you don't have tape, you could also use something like a rubber band or a paper clip, anything that would secure your windmill on your straw. But I'm using tape on both sides. You see how that is? Okay. So now we have the top of our windmill, so let's work on the base of our windmill. So we're going to take our large cup or our canister, whatever you're using, and we are going to take our bigger straw and measure the top of our canister. So if you're using a cup, you're going to want to make sure the cup is turned upside down, so the base of your cup is actually what has the opening, so it's a little sturdier when you sit. So you're going to be measuring the top of your cup as it stands up for your windmill. And you're going to take your straw and you're going to cut it to the right size. So you see here, I've already cut my straw to be the same width as the top of my canister. So go ahead and do that. You just snip it off with scissors if it's not the right size. Then I'm going to take another piece of tape and we're just going to tape this right in place. Now when you're taping, you want to be careful. You don't want to push down too much on your straw and have it flattened, because you're going to need to put your other straw through that. So if it's flattened out, you're going to have a harder time threading it through. I'm going to put 2 pieces of tape to secure that on both sides of my lid. So now I have my straw attached here to the top of my canister. The next thing we're going to do is take our windmill again, and we're going to put our small straw right there through our larger straw. So hopefully it just threads right on through. Now we don't want the tape that we put on to interfere with the larger straw, so I'm going to leave just a little bit of room between where the tape ends and where my large straw begins. Now over here, you really only need about 1.5 inches of straw hanging from this side. So you can cut that off if you want, or you can go ahead and just let it hang over a little bit more. It won't affect your windmill. So, okay. Now, this is our main part of the windmill. We can even test it right now to see if it works. You can blow. And yes, it's turning just fine. So I'm going to set that to the side. And now we're going to work on our small cup. So this is going to act like a bucket for our experiment, because this is what we want our windmill to lift. So the first thing I need to do is take my hole punch, and I'm going to punch 2 holes in my cup. So I've already done that here. You see I have 1 hole on this side and then another on this side. So you want to line them up so you can see it goes straight through your cup there. So go ahead and punch that. Then you're going to take a string. And now give yourself enough string, because you can always make it a little bit shorter, but we don't want to have to retie everything. And I want you to thread your string or your twine through your cup. So now you have something like this. You're going to take it up to where it meets each other, and we're going to just tie a little knot in our cup, in our string. So this is where you give yourself a little extra string on the end so it's easy to tie. You don't want to fumble with your yarn here. So there we go. So now I have a little bucket on my cup. So if you want to go ahead and get rid of that extra yarn on that one side, you can. You can trim it down a little bit to clean it up. But now we're going to attach this to our windmill. So I'm going to bring this back over. And what we're going to do is we're just going to secure our string with a little bit of slack onto our straw. So you can do this by just tying it in a knot right here. And then after we get a knot in it, we do want to go ahead and secure it in another way. So you can again use anything you have. You could use a paper clip or a rubber band, but again, I'm just going to use tape. And I'm just going to secure that because I don't want my string to just spin around loosely on my straw. I want it to make sure that string is staying in place. Okay. So now our basic components for our windmill are complete. So we have our paper that is now almost like our blades for our windmill. We have the shaft of our windmill here, and then we have, this is going to act sort of as our motor or our generator. So we're hoping that this windmill can now lift the load of this cup. So let's see if our windmill works. So what we're going to do is we're just going to blow lightly on our windmill to see if it affects this cup here. So go ahead and watch this and see if it is working. Hey, it worked. So I did have a little extra slack in my yarn there, and so it took me a few more times to get it around, but it lifted our load. So our experiment is a success. It actually did what we wanted it to do here. Now you see here at the end, my thread, my string is almost at the end. Now if you have a problem with it slipping off, you can put something at the end of your straw here to make sure that it doesn't. That could be a binder clip, it could be another rubber band, something that just acts as a barrier so it doesn't slip. But now that you have your experiment complete, you can take some time to try other variations of this. You could see if having a bigger blade would affect the result. You could also see how much weight your windmill could pick up, and that could be as simple as adding pennies to your cup. So maybe one at a time, you could add a penny to your cup to see if you could still lift it. Record your findings. See how many pennies you could actually lift with just blowing on it yourself. Maybe you could even add a small fan. So maybe you have a fan in your room. So instead of you blowing it, you could turn the fan on and see how that affects your windmill. And on the printout on the 4-H STEM Lab, you also have a page where you can record your findings. But you don't need to print this out necessarily. You can just record that on any piece of paper. And we would love to see what results you have. So if you want to share them in the comments of this post, that would be great too. But this project really is an example of how wind energy is used to power something. So if you live in an area that has windmills, you know that those are used to power actual electricity. They produce electricity for houses. So I want to tell you a little bit about the terminology of a windmill. So we're going to bring our model back here. So the three main parts of a windmill are the giant blades and the rotor here, and this is called the turbine. The turbine. Then we have the shaft, so that's what holds the windmill up. And then we have the generator. So our generator here is sort of reflected by our straws that are producing our lift. But in a regular turbine, that would be the generators that are creating the energy. So one turbine, one windmill, can actually power 500 homes. So that's pretty amazing. They're harnessing the power of the wind and really transferring that energy into something that we can use. And this is a very sustainable energy. So these are things that we want to continue to learn more about, see how we can improve. And we can start, really young and even at home at a project just like this to see how different elements affect that. So when you play around with yours, maybe see if increasing the shaft height would make any difference in your experiment. So I'm excited to see what you find out, and I would love for you to visit the 4-H STEM Lab. There's other activities there that you can work on at home, and I hope you join me again for another online programming next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.